Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars discussion video. This one is going to be my discussion on Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 4. This one has the subtitle Battle Lines. So this is a kind of weird season in the sense that you remember it for a lot of the really big moments that happen at the end, and I think a lot of maybe the middle arcs and stuff like that. But you almost forget like one or two of the arcs in the middle, and then there are a few weaker episodes in this one where I'd say like they are probably some of the weakest in maybe the entire series. So it ends up being sort of this very weird season to view, in that there are a good amount of episodes that are kind of on the weaker side of things, some on the stronger side of things, and it just comes out somewhere in the middle. So the first arc is a three episode arc, Water War, Gungan Attack, and Prisoners. This is our Mon Cal arc here, with the issues between the Mon Calamari and the Quarren, with the Separatists involved. It's obviously super underwater focus. You know, we get Kit Fisto involved here. We have the main sort of villain be this shark guy, what's his name, Reef Tamson or whatever his name is. And the thing with this arc is just that I think it goes on a little long. Given what the gimmick of this is, underwater, it really highlights that they really runs out of steam by the end. That they only have so much interesting stuff they can do with the choreography underwater, the plot. You can kind of get behind, you know, the prince here, Lee Char, and, you know, what's going on here. But it doesn't quite work. It doesn't all come together. It very much feels like an arc that is very just, the gimmick is that we're underwater, and that's it. It should be, I think, a little bit more interesting than that, because it is a full sort of Battlefront arc, basically, of just this campaign underwater. But it doesn't quite come together in exactly the way you want. So, for me, kind of weak start to the season. Then we go into one of the few solo episodes of Season 4, Shadow Warrior, which I do think is a very good episode. They pack so much into this one. This is just a very eventful episode, in that, like, the Gungans end up sort of capturing Grievous. There's actually some really tense scenes here as they really get the jump on him. But, you know, Dooku captures Anakin, and there's this need for the switch, you know, to the prisoner exchange, and it's just an impactful episode because, wow, Grievous gets captured, Anakin gets captured, like, and there's an exchange all in one episode. Yet we had 3 episodes on the rather dull, you know, underwater Mon Cal arc. It just like really highlights where the focus is, and in a way like too much focus on certain things in some cases. Episode 5 and 6 is kind of a two-parter, Mercy Mission and Nomad Droids. This is like our R2 and C-3PO arc for the season. We also have Plo Koon and his clone troopers, the Wolf Pack, in here. Like, borderline, I don't think they play enough of a role, or they don't come across well enough to really help this arc. Especially the first episode, Mercy Mission, I think is one of the weakest episodes in the entire series of the Clone Wars. Nomad Droids is a lot better, but it's still not particularly amazing. But it's helped by the fact that, you know, Grievous is involved, Adi Gallia, and stuff like that. But, you know, I think this is just, you know, the 3PO focused episodes didn't really tend to work in the Clone Wars. R2, I think, did manage to stand out in the arcs that he had focus in, but 3PO not as much. And unfortunately, it's a case here with the Season 4 episodes for those characters. They're definitely on the weaker side of things. Next up, we have the 4 episode arc, the Umbara arc. Darkness on Umbara, The General, Plan of Descent, and Carnage of Krell. In general, I really like this arc. Another sort of battle arc, focusing on, you know, the campaign on a specific planet and the strategy. They devote a lot of episodes to it. It ultimately gets to the point where it's dealing with some really interesting stuff. It's a more clone-centric arc. Introduction of a new Jedi in Jedi Master Pong Krell. Him taking over the 501st when Anakin has to leave on a different mission. And just how the clones deal with a different approach to leadership. I think they do a lot here with some of the characters, but I do feel it's one of those arcs where it maybe spends a little bit too much of its time early on really trying to get across the idea that you're not meant to like Krell, when I think it comes across that way much earlier than perhaps the writers think it does. And so, it maybe takes just, an episode too long to get into the clones sort of almost beginning to rebel and disobey Krell's orders, and then like the final episode to be as amazing as it is. So this is one where, like, yeah, I think you probably could have cut this down from 4 episodes to 3, and it would have made it this like incredible arc that doesn't feel like it's wasting any time. I appreciate the need to build up the tension because it is such a sort of big topic of this Order 66-esque thing, but you're actually on the clone side in it. That's how kind of bad things get with Krell here, that you agree with the clones when, they consider him a traitor for what he's doing. And I like that that's the build, that Krell is such a different leader to what they're used to, so different than Anakin. Like, Anakin has the full trust and loyalty of every member of the 501st because of the way he does things. He listens to what the clones have to say, he tells them his plans, he comes up with good, clever plans that have a potential to work. He cares about them, he doesn't just sacrifice them, and they appreciate that. To become part of the 501st, you have to sort of be an elite clone. So you understand you're going to be involved in these kind of high-risk missions with Anakin, but that he's going to be fighting up front right alongside you. And I think so many of the 501st completely respect that sense. And that's complete contrast to Krell, who stays back, just gives orders, has them do basically everything. He doesn't really fight alongside them, and just has very basic tactics that allowed him to get completely overwhelmed here. And I think it does help in a way that, like, we're not fighting the droids here, we're fighting the Umbarans here. That adds to it, that like it's you hate seeing the clones get so badly kind of outmatched and just get slaughtered in so many situations, and that's why you completely get behind Fives, Jesse, Hardcase, and, Rex's growing concern about Krell. And Rex is put in this interesting position where you have his men asking him, talk to the general for us. You are the commander, you are the captain of the forces. You talk to Krell to get our point of view across. It can't go on like this. And Rex wanting to listen to his men, but also having to obey the general, and him being trapped in that kind of tough position. And eventually, things get so bad, we have 2 of them kind of go off on their own, basically dissent, but their plan ends up working out for the better. And you think things are getting a little bit better, but ultimately Krell decides that no, they need to be executed for what they did. I can't have people disobeying me, even though it was better than anything I came up with. And it all comes to a head with the big moment of like, oh, there's information that like the enemy might be wearing clone armor. They might be going undercover wearing clone armor. So if you see any clones out there, attack them. And we get this tragic battle where the 501st end up fighting some of Obi-Wan's clones, and they end up killing each other. And the moment when Rex sees that it's actually other clones, and he's trying to bring the battle to an end, it's so intense and dramatic. And I think it's Waxer or Boyle who gets killed here, so it's a clone that we know gets killed. And it's just like, yes, Krell needs to be dealt with. And we hadn't seen him in action the entire arc, and he only really jumps into action to fight the clones. And you see just how incredible he is, because he has 2 double-bladed lightsabers, he's like really powerful and, experienced. He's a huge threat to all of these clones, and so they're getting kind of hacked to pieces, but they use sort of what they learned over the course of, basically obeying Krell's bad orders. They know the landscape better than he does, and they use that to their advantage and end up capturing him. And you get that situation where, okay, they have him, he's basically asking Rex, okay, you're the commander, you led this. You kill me. See what happens, Rex, when you have to kill me. And eventually it's the one clone who was sort of on Krell's side for most of the arc. he's the one who is the most betrayed, and so he's the one who kills Krell. And I think just it dealt with so many great topics of like, you know, the idea of Order 66 and like the clones fighting a Jedi before Order 66 even kind of comes into things. Really, really well done arc for sure. We move from this arc into a 3-episode arc, the the Zygerria arc, Kadavo is the planet involved in this. But, you know, the slaves of the Republic, it's kidnapped slaves of the Republic and escaped from Kadavo. The Slavers arc based on the comic series that came out earlier. I really like this arc. I borderline forgot that this was an arc in the Clone Wars before I did my rewatch ahead of all of these videos. And I came out of watching this arc feeling like, character-wise, this is probably one of the best arcs in the Clone Wars, because the character writing, the voice acting is so good. The situations they put like Obi-Wan, Anakin, Ahsoka in over the course of this arc is so well done. Anakin and his past suddenly involved in dealing with slavers. Obi-Wan put in the negotiator position and having to, you know, take a beating to kind of waste some time. Anakin's acting and sort of flirting with the Zygerrian queen, and how it goes from being this kind of, you know, just he's trying to use the queen to actually this very interesting relationship over the course of these 3 episodes, where they really discuss the idea of like what it is to be a slave, and the different ways that can sort of manifest itself, and that, like, you know, she basically wants Anakin to be her slave, but she kind of frames it in a way where like, oh, you've been a slave before, but no, you'll be working for me, but you won't. You'll have freedom, but you'll just be working for me, and like, but that's being a slave as well. But because the Zygerrians are sort of like basically working for the Separatists in all of this, he kind of counters by like, aren't you a slave to the Separatists and everything going on here? And I think there's just some really good character stuff going on here, like Obi-Wan and Rex in the slave camps, and them trying to beat basically the kind of sense of heroism out of Obi-Wan. Really good stuff in that, like, you get a sense that it's this sort of thing that whenever the Obi-Wan series comes out, an episode might focus on this, the idea that as a Jedi he would want to be involved in everything, but he might, to stay undercover, have to stay out of it. Some very interesting stuff. Even Ahsoka having to basically go undercover as like a slave is a really interesting kind of dynamic for her as the arc goes on. But yeah, really, really good arc. Then we get the solo episode here, A Friend in Need, which, again, very strong solo episode. It really highlights that I kind of almost wish some of the later seasons of the Clone Wars had more one-off episodes, because they were, by the end, able to cover so much in some of these episodes. And this is another one of those ones that I think really works. We see like the reintroduction of Lux Bonteri post the death of his mother. So he and Ahsoka sort of get involved in this, you know, kind of plot to find justice for what happened to his mother. And it puts Lux in this interesting position where he's kind of in the middle ground. Like he doesn't want to join the Republic, but he knows the Separatists were the ones who killed his mother. And so he trusts Ahsoka, and she's going to help him. But he's basically in with the Death Watch and Pre Vizsla, and Ahsoka has to go undercover as basically the girl betrothed to Lux Bonteri. So, you know, we get some romantic kind of tension continuing here, and just a very fun dynamic and episode of like teasing, you know, oh, here's Pre Vizsla all of a sudden, so we're getting more Mandalore stuff coming up at some point, set up for season 5. And just, I like where this goes. You know, of course, Vizsla gets a bit incensed once he finds out Ahsoka's a Jedi, but Ahsoka also gets a chance to really kind of show how impressive she is, because she like beheads like 4 Mandalorians in one shot at one point. Next up is the Rako Hardeen arc, a 4-episode arc here with Deception, Friends and Enemies, The Box, and Crisis on Naboo. This is the arc where Obi-Wan has to fake his death and become a bounty hunter to get in with like Cad Bane, get hired for this big mission that the Separatists are planning to kidnap Palpatine So to just get in on the loop on that. And it covers a lot of ground. Like, it's 4 episodes, but I think it's 4 episodes sort of well used, because the action episode to episode is good because you have such a cool dynamic of Obi-Wan having to be like deep undercover as a bounty hunter. You have Cad Bane as like a recurring character who we know before. We have Moralo Eval as like a new character who's sort of the mastermind of some of this. And then like Dooku comes into it later on. I think it's just a very, very strong episode where you cover so much with the prison escape to get Cad Bane out. We go to like one of the Hutt worlds at some point as well. And you have like basically Obi-Wan, who like Anakin thinks is dead at this point, getting pursued by Anakin and Ahsoka. And he's like trying to fend them off without giving away his cover. And you have that whole underlying thing, the entire arc of they haven't told Anakin. Anakin is one of the people they haven't kept in on the loop on this. And so he thinks Obi-Wan is dead this entire arc. And so when he finds out that Reiko Hardeen is Obi-Wan, it's such a breach of trust that no one trusted him enough to keep this under wraps. And it's a real game changer moment in terms of like, they don't trust me enough to do this. Really, like some of the moments towards the end where he finds this out are very powerful from Anakin. But yeah, like you have the box episode where we get to see all the bounty hunters sort of testing their skills. The amount of them that we meet, it's really cool to see the unique kind of skills and abilities they all have. With Obi-Wan really impressing everyone with his sort of ingenuity, figuring out most of the puzzles and being extremely skillful. In that, for most of these episodes, it's Cad Bane, Moralo Eval, both of them in some ways, trying to get Reiko Hardeen off the mission by like putting him into a situation he can't get out of. But of course, it's Obi-Wan, so he does get out of it. So it's really impressive. The final episode of this arc is Crisis on Naboo, which I think is definitely the highlight of this arc because it's where everything comes together. The big plan, Obi-Wan as Reiko Hardeen involved in it, the big action when everything goes down, and of course Obi-Wan doesn't fulfill his section of the plan, but later it's revealed that actually Dooku knew he was in on it because he left like a recorder basically there. On I think Obi-Wan's like sniper rifle, the case that it was held in. So he knew that Obi-Wan was undercover. And so the actual kidnapping attempt happens later on, and it's like Dooku versus Anakin, and then eventually Obi-Wan gets involved, and it's just a really intense fight scene. And it's one of those moments where the action here sort of shows you that like Anakin is beginning to be able to sort of get the advantage over Dooku. So it's sort of beginning to set up, you know, why Anakin is so powerful in episode 3 and so on. So pretty good arc, along with just the breach of trust being sort of an ongoing thing after this point in a way. After this, we get, you know, you could sort of call it a 2-part, 2-episode arc, but like really they're just like individual episodes that sort of happen to follow one after the other, following Ventress's arc. They're not really a 2-parter as such because they are sort of so different. And they, just the way they do like the second episode, Bounty, like we start off with Massacre, which I'll discuss in a second, but Bounty doesn't follow on like immediately, but it is sort of the, you know, next stage of Ventress's arc. But Massacre, I think, is another very important episode just with regards to how much it's able to do on its own. If any of you have played the game Jedi Fallen Order, this is the episode to watch to get the explanation on how Dathomir ends up the way it is in Jedi Fallen Order. Why the Night Sisters are basically gone, and why there's so few people left. It's because of the results of this episode. The massacre is the Night Sisters at the hands of Dooku and especially General Grievous. And I think that's what's impressive about this one, is that this is probably Grievous's most impressive episode, where he gets to do the most stuff and be as threatening as he's like set up as, because he really feels like this relentless killing machine in this episode. That borderline, it feels like the Night Sisters' magics just doesn't work on him. He is just immune to it almost. He just charges through, taking people out, and the whole time, like, you're focusing on it from Ventress's point of view, that this is the new sort of safe haven for Ventress after everything that's happened. She finally is back with her people, and here Dooku once again is ordering it to be taken out. And we have Ventress versus Grievous, Talzin, with the whole voodoo doll thing, with Dooku trying to kill him. We get to meet Daka, the elder of the Night Sister clan, the undead Night Sisters, and so on. And eventually, of course, it's, Grievous killing Daka, and then the sort of what seems like the death of Talzin, really leading to the end of the Night Sisters. And so Ventress is out on her own again, lost once more. I loved the setup for Ventress's arc of just, she had to be given away to protect the Night Sisters in the first place, and then she sort of was fine with that guy, but then that guy was killed, and then she was training with their Jedi Master until he was killed, and then she's the Sith apprentice of Dooku until she's thrown away, and then she's back with her Night Sisters, and then they're killed. And so what is her path now with all of that stuff gone? And that's what the setup is at the end of this episode, going into Bounty, where she happens to come across bounty hunters, including like Bossk, Dengar, Boba Fett, and so on, and this is her path, is she's going to be a bounty hunter. And you're kind of wondering, like, oh, is this going to be the next sort of mistake that she makes, going down this different dark path, this time as a bounty hunter, where just has no morals, just money at all cost, basically. But then you get the big twist when she sees what the mission that they're on is about, and she actually helps the girl out and sort of betrays her bounty hunter teammates in a way. And I think that works so well to show you that there is that sense of like hope going forward, that she isn't just lost completely as a character, that there's this sense of there's a good core to her, and that she hasn't lost herself to dark side stuff, and that almost like her wanting revenge against Dooku is kind of what really, anyway, took some of that darkness out of her, in a way. And then the last two episodes of the season, Brothers and Revenge, is a 2-part arc, of course. We go back to Savage Opress, of course, searching for his brother Darth Maul, and he finds him on this junk planet in the Outer Rim, and it's a really cool setup of just this complete planet of just junk, trash. There doesn't seem to be any living thing there, and eventually he finds his brother, but of course he's crazy because he's been on his own for so long. He's been nearly killed, he's been cut in half, he's used the Force to basically create this spider-like lower body for himself, and he's just barely alive almost, but you can sense that, like, oh, there's still something left here, because he used his rage, his anger, his pure hatred of Obi-Wan to keep himself alive. That's what's going to drive him going forward, and eventually he does get back on his feet. He's healed, basically. He gets new, they kind of morph his spider-like body into normal legs, as normal until later on as you can get, and immediately upon having some clarity back, the first thing Darth Maul wants to do, revenge straight away against Obi-Wan. So he engineers a confrontation with him by murdering the inhabitants of this random village and sending it to Jedi Council. So he does go out alone, of course. He has to. It's Maul perfectly playing on the type of character that Obi-Wan is. And of course, the surprise here is that Obi-Wan is obviously taken aback by the fact that it's like, oh, Maul and Opress are related. This is bad. He is going to be killed here, because as strong as Obi-Wan is, he can't handle these two on his own, can he? And that's where Ventress turns up here. she's a bounty hunter, she is after Oppress because he has a high bounty. So the two end up having to work together, and there's a really nice dynamic of like them just throwing some snappy one-liners at each other, and there's a little bit of kind of flirting in there without going too far. And ultimately, there's stuff like the swapping lightsabers back and forth. Like Obi-Wan has to use one of hers for a while, and I think they end up like she has his one for a little bit, but then they swap back. It's very fun, and just like, yes, this is the perfect way to get across the idea of like Ventress getting in the way is what stops the revenge plot from happening here. And we end with the idea that Obi-Wan knows that his great nemesis is back, and he's just out for his blood. What's Obi-Wan gonna do going up next? Where's Ventress gonna go from here still, I suppose? And Maul and Oppress now really have their goals set on things, and they're forced to be reckoned with. So good setup for things going forward, and it's just a really strong setup for season 5 and some of the really big stuff in our sort of final normal season in terms of as the show begins to wrap up in its first iteration. But yeah, they're my thoughts on season 4 of the Clone Wars. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.